people on chat, and I don't know if you've noticed some of this chat, Michael, but it's been really cool to have people relate and share their experiences. I guess like one of my first things that I'd like to start off with is just ask you, first off, how are you doing? You and your wife doing, where you're located with all this pandemic stuff going on?
We're in an area, we live in Indiana in the United States, and so they just issued a stay-at-home order as of yesterday. So we are doing just that. We're staying at home.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we have food, we have each other, we have, you know, everything that we need here at the house to survive. We're fine. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of economic fallout from that. We will also be touched by that because my wife has a business that she's had to shut down, and but such is life, and there are more important things. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And you always, I feel like you're such a positive person to talk through. But I am really sorry that that's happening and that it's affecting you and your wife. What, you know, for those who are listening who are former members, what advice would you give right now? You're really familiar with the concept of Armageddon, of course, being a former JW, and I'm sure that maybe this time has been triggering, and maybe I'm wrong, for you, just with some big world issues happening. What is some advice you give those who maybe are feeling really stressed and affected by this pandemic, maybe feeling like, well, is the apocalypse coming? Is it true? Is it imminent? What do you have to say on that?
Well, I'll say for me, it actually doesn't trigger me whatsoever. But I do see that in a lot of the people that I work with, you know, as a professional coach. I also, you know, I have a Facebook group, and people in there are having family members who are current Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, reaching out to them, you know, it's not too late to basically get on the ark when the flood comes. It's not too late. You can survive through this. And so, you know, for those who are getting those kind of messages, or for those who internally have those kind of messages, it's important to see, you know, where the teaching came from. It came from a group of people that have been promoting this now since the 1800s. The end is always coming tomorrow, and they've predicted specific dates. Those have come to pass. They're always making passive aggressive remarks. Those have come to pass. Even the things that they are saying today, like, look at how Jehovah is taking care of his people. Jehovah's Witnesses are just obeying the laws of the land. The laws of the land have said that you can't meet together, and that you shouldn't be doing things like going door to door. So everything that they say has a spin on it, as you know, coming from that religious angle. And so when you can see the spin, and frankly, if you come from this kind of a background, you typically get fairly good at spotting propaganda. So again, you know, the world is ending has been a cry of humanity for a long time. The media is, I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate issues and concerns here, but the media puts their spin on it as well. And there's a lot of hype around this and a lot of fear. And so I just encourage people to kind of read between the lines, realize that things aren't all or nothing. They're usually somewhere in between. And just try to remember where this fear is coming from in the first place, because it's a place that was full of untruths and lies to begin with. So, you know, when you see that, this is just another one.
Thank you for that. And that's great to hear that you yourself aren't necessarily personally, I guess, heightened, triggered by that. And I think that's great. And it shows that where you're at, maybe in your recovery process. And I think that's awesome.
I hope so.
do you have some time for some Q&A?
Yeah,
We've
absolutely. Let's do it.
coming in great. I've loved this Q&A time with everyone. I've been doing this for the past few days now, and it's almost been like this lightning round. It's just like questions coming in, and it's just great. So I'll kind of help field some of these questions. One of the first ones is, why do you consider the JWs to be a cult rather than a religion? And do you consider all religions to be cults? For example, Catholicism shuns those who have been baptized if they leave the religion by saying they are going to hell, which is very real to their members. Let me know if you need me to repeat any of that, Michael.
Okay. I think that you can look at something like Steve Hassan's bite model for cults, that a cult controls your behavior, your access to information, your thoughts, and your emotions. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses absolutely do that. They tell you how to think. They tell you how you should feel about things. They tell you not to look outside of their organization for other information, that you should only stick to information provided by the faithful slave. And behaviorally, you spend literally every moment of your life in fear that any moment you may end up shunned because of a misstep. The difference that I would see and that I would say between, let's say, Jehovah's Witnesses and let's take Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses aren't just saying that you're going to go to hell or that you're going to die and have whatever the punishment is. They're punishing you now, and they're exercising that authority and control now, and they're weaponizing your own family and friends against you in order to keep you in line. There are extra layers of control that are being put upon members well beyond just the thought that you please a God and you get a reward, you displease a God, you get a punishment. I do think that just about any religion could become culty with leaders that particularly impose their thoughts, their feelings, their way of life in all aspects on their members. And also, Jehovah's Witnesses their entire life is being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all encompassing. It's the morning time they get up to the time they go to bed at night. They are Jehovah's Witnesses, and it impacts everything they watch on TV. I don't know Catholics that are quite under as much pressure as the average Jehovah's Witness.
Thank you for answering that. And I would like to say, from ICSA's kind of perspective, there's a lot of benefits in dialogue, which is great that we're even asking some of these big, difficult questions that, I would say not one of us has the complete answer to. And I think you'd agree with that. But also, ICSA has a really helpful, frequently asked questions about what makes a group a cult. What do you consider a cult, and some of the dangers of labeling and lumping some of these groups too. And so just the benefit of dialogue is really important. But also, I was going to say one more thing. I'm sure it will come to me again. But until then, let's move on to the next question. And then when it comes to me, I apologize. I'll bring it up. Okay, here. This is a great question. What are some issues former members have with dating and relationships after leaving, and what can they do to express their sexuality in a healthy manner?
Ooh, that's a big one.
It
is. As far as relationships go, well, dating can be very difficult, because you have to remember that members have been told that everyone on the outside is scary. They've been told that they shouldn't trust other people. Their trust has probably been broken. As I talked about in the video, intimacy is an issue, as is vulnerability. If you want to have a good dating and romantic relationship, intimacy and vulnerability is part of that. So people often struggle with that. When it comes to sexuality, it's so tough, because Jehovah's Witnesses take a very hardline stance. So you have people that have been taught that any sex without marriage is just flat out wrong. And whatever your biology is telling you, you've got a mental block. You know, you may have a mental block. Not everyone. Everyone leaves and has their own experience, but you know, it's going to be difficult in that way. Then you have, you know, if someone is gay, that is going to be difficult because they've been told again, it's not just your sexuality is wrong, it's you are wrong. And so there's so much to overcome there when it comes to having those kinds of relationships. I mean, it's not like Jehovah's Witnesses inside the organization are having healthy dating or sexual lives. There are a lot of relationships inside the organization, marriages that are sexless because they, you know, your whole life sex is supposed to be bad and evil and wrong and gross and disturbing. You get married and suddenly instantly it's supposed to be great. And so, you know, they really play a number on people's sexuality, both inside and outside the organization, because it takes a long time to, your brain can say, okay, I'm ready to be free, but your feelings lag behind and it takes a while to catch up. So it can be a great struggle for people.
Thank you for that. Someone asked Michael, what non-JW people have you interviewed or interacted with?
Interesting. I have interviewed, well, I can actually give you some of their names, but I've interviewed people from the FLDS, the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, the Amish, the Mennonites, an online group called Is, Was, and Will Be, a man named Dave Warnock, who is currently suffering with ALS, and he has kind of his own movement, Dying Out Loud, and he was a Presbyterian. I think it was Presbyterian. I hope I got that right. I think he was Presbyterian, and they had a particularly charismatic leader in their church that kind of created a shunning atmosphere that has kept him from his family. Not saying that that's a universal thing in that church, but their particular brand or branch in that church he was at, that leadership kind of inculcated that in their members, and he ended up being shunned. So I think, unless I'm forgetting something, I think that's most of the people that I've interviewed. And I've talked to people, you know, of Baptist, Lutheran, people in Judaism, Muslims. I've talked to a lot of different people just over time.
Yep. Thank you. By the way, I remembered what had escaped me earlier, so we're going to backtrack just for a second. In regards to the Catholic question that was brought up earlier, just from the ICSA perspective, not necessarily, you know, my own personal, but from the ICSA perspective, ICSA does not have a list of necessarily groups. You know, they don't have a list online that says all these groups are cults, because ICSA more so provides information on negative behaviors and tendencies to look for, kind of like what you mentioned with, you know, JWs, some of the almost the red flags and how much control and the isolation. We more so focus on, you know, negative behaviors and controlling behaviors and kind of use that as an indicator, but we typically don't blanket, just from an ICSA perspective, groups as XYZ are all cults all the time. So hopefully that was helpful. Maybe not, but just let me know. But I wanted to share that before it escaped me again. So just another question here. Someone mentioned, and I'm so sorry if I don't pronounce this correctly, but I'm going to try. Coming from a brujeria, a cult background, I can relate to many things you deserve. Maybe she meant to say describe. I'm not sure. Her question is, was it hard to make new friends?
So I will say that my experience is not the norm. Okay. For me, I had a pretty easy time. We had a cleaning business at the time. We had many families that we worked with. As all of this was changing and my wife and I ended up leaving the Witnesses, it was very stressful and it impacted our lives. And we always had a good relationship with our clients, but really, they kind of became our friends and confidants in ways. They supported us when we needed support. So um, we had like a core group of first friends, people that basically adopted us into their families. We still go to their houses for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Halloween, and we're a part of these people's lives. And from there, we were then able to meet other people and branch off. But the average witness does struggle if they come out and they don't have someone. You have to have a seed to get a plant, and if you don't at least have somebody there, a place to start, and then to start branching off of, it can be very difficult. We also left in a state where we had spent 8 years getting mentally and emotionally healthy. The average witness who leaves is cast out in an instant. They're disfellowshipped for a behavioral issue and suddenly find themselves out in the wide world with nobody, and they haven't had any chance to get better mentally and emotionally, where they're not going to have the fear of literally everyone around them instantaneously in their face, which is going to isolate them even further. So our experience, it was easy for us. I'm just being honest. I shouldn't say easy. It was still a whole new world, but we had a good base to start off of, a good nucleus. The average person doesn't have that.
Right. Kind of a two-part question here. Number one, have you ever talked with ex-Hooterites? Is that how you say it? And if not, I'm really sorry. Doesn't look like you have.
No, never.
Okay.
I have not heard of that.
I personally have never heard of that group either. And then the second part of that question is, what can I do with feeling isolated from everyone and being unable to fit in with the norm?
Okay. That's a big question too.
Yeah, it is. These questions are great, everybody.
Good question.
They're really good.
So it's marketing. If you feel, if you had a product, how do you sell it to someone? You are your product, essentially. How are you going to connect with other people? You have to find things, you have to find commonalities. Now, I'm speaking ignorantly here because I don't know what your beliefs are. So I don't know. There are probably a lot of factors here. So like an Amish person, they might be dealing with more isolation than a witness, because a witness is more out in the world at large and has the common technology and things like that. So there are things to draw upon. An Amish person is going to have a more difficult time because they are farther behind as far as maybe pop culture and things like that we were exposed to. So we might be able to at least fake it till you make it sometimes. So it really depends on how isolated you were. But in the end, we're all just people, and everyone has feelings. Honestly, I think that a great thing to do, and it may feel weird, it probably will at first, it's very vulnerable, but relating your story to people, that whether it's someone at work or someone you're around in some capacity, being open and honest about who you are and where you come from, a lot of times people will find interest in that, and you never know where that conversation might lead. I've had amazing conversations with people simply by being open and vulnerable, which people respect. And when you are open and vulnerable, oftentimes other people will be. So you never know what kind of commonalities you might find. Other than that, going to events and trying to meet people at an event that you are interested in common, that can be a great thing. Joining meetup groups. Again, I don't know what you have where you are, but things like that really help.
I wanted to add a clarification. Someone typed in it's Hutterites, and I hope that's a little bit better, Hutterites. And I guess they strive for pacifism, separation from society, perhaps very similar to maybe Amish or JW. If that's not correct, please let me know. But yeah, I mean, it's like you mentioned, that vulnerability, but also healthy boundaries at the same time, which sounds like what you were just about to mention. So I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. You certainly don't want to. I mean, you can generally tell when you share with someone how this is going.
Mhm.
Is this something that a person can handle, or is this something that they cannot handle,
Yeah,
based on the reaction? I've typically, honestly, found most people, at least the people that we were around, were pretty open to that. That's not going to be the case everywhere, but if you were in kind of a separate from society, um, maybe it is something like finding, maybe there was something that you had in your life that other people have in their life. Maybe you like outdoor things. There are groups for hiking or walking, any kind of exercise. You can find people that have a similar something to you. And that's just where you have to start. You have to just start talking to people. And asking questions is a wonderful tool. When you ask questions of people, it takes the pressure off of you to perform, to be the person to lead this conversation. And questions and just being generally curious about other people can often lead to wonderful conversations and potential relationships. You might find a little less isolation there.
sure. Thank you for that.
Sure.
This is a great question. I love this question. Being shunned by one's family is so shaming in general society. Most still belong to a family, no matter how toxic. I find I get judged and ostracized by others whose family is important to them and very much part of their identity.
Mhm.
How do you describe to others your situation of not having a blood family appropriately in a way that doesn't go into too much detail, but which doesn't feed into their judgments? It's a great question. So
Okay.
essentially, how do you come across with your unique situation? Because I mean, that what that person described, I also can see quite often is people still are like, well, they're still family, right? No matter how toxic, no matter how harmful. So what advice do you have on that?
So I guess I'm a little unclear. Are you, maybe I'm missing this in the question. Are you, if you're shunned, for me, I just say I'm shunned. I'm just open with people. That's who I am. But that is who I am. That's my personality, okay? I am an open book, and it has worked well for me. Everyone has to deal with where they are and who they are. So if you are a person that maybe feels awkward about it, or it maybe wells up a lot of emotions in you, the thing that you can do, I like to recommend that people have what in business you would call an elevator pitch, essentially something that you can say that is pre-planned when someone asks you what you do in business, or as a person, when someone is asking you about your family, have something to say that it has to be something that feels right to you. If you're a person that struggles to talk about it because it comes with a lot of feelings, people can understand sometimes we're just not close. You can leave it generalized at times. It depends on who this person is, how much information you feel like giving.
There's
And
a lot of factors involved.
yeah, there's a tremendous amount of factors. I would just recommend, I just recommend preparation. If you know this is something that maybe is a sensitive point, and now when people shame you for that, I mean, you have to realize that's them projecting. Um, I get it too. People at times have their families and they think I should have one too. But we all have what we have, and we all have to be happy where we are. And their desire for me to have a family does not create one. So
There was a kind of an additive to that question too. What about if that situation is having been shunned as a woman and the kids are still with the ex-husband? There's so much judgment about how a woman cannot have her own kids, which is a really tough
well,
situation.
yeah, I mean, assuming this is based in your life,
Mhm.
or whoever's, I feel for you, because that's tough.
Yeah.
There are a lot of cultural expectations. when it comes to that scenario, again, you have to realize that other people's judgments aren't your, that's up to them. That they own that. That's their judgment. I know that it hurts at times, but sometimes, and it's going to hurt on one hand, because people are going to say things that are going to tug at your heartstrings. On the other hand, if you can look and try to give them the grace of understanding where they're coming from, at times, you know, they're coming from a certain cultural norm as they see it. You are in a tough place, and sometimes balancing the two can help the feelings from becoming overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked the question, was it difficult to deprogram yourself and become a life coach at the same time? Or did you do one first and then the other? Why life coaching instead of becoming a counselor? Also, do you have a life coach training program you respect or recommend, I guess?
All right.
Let me know if you need me to repeat any part of that.
Okay, I'll see if I got that.
Okay.
I spent 8 years before I left Jehovah's Witnesses researching a lot about various mental illnesses, about various, there's a lot of self-help. I found a lot of that very interesting, and how things play off of one another. Obviously, so I did that first. I then left the Witnesses, and it wasn't until 3 to 4 years out that I started looking into life coaching. Why did I go the life coaching route? I was already helping people. I already had a podcast established, and I had people coming to me constantly, wanting advice, with questions, and I was very able to help a lot of people. And so why did I choose life counseling or life coaching over counseling or some other professional degree or whatever the case? Honestly, I chose it because I was already doing it, and I wanted to just continue helping people, but I wanted to do so in a more professional manner. I wanted to find out what that was about. I also had some people in my life that I knew that were doing that. So I was coming from a perspective of familiarity. And so I also happen to like it. I have some of my own personal views vis-a-vis some of the freedom that I have in life coaching versus some of what some other people can do. And I appreciate what I get to do. I could have gone to school to do something else, but I'm helping people now. I'm enjoying it. And that's why I did it. Do I have a particular school that I recommend? No, I do not. Everyone has to figure out what it is that would fit them personally. I'm really reluctant to make any recommendations because everyone has to find something that fits them and that is going to take them where they want to go. And some programs are better, you know, you may find that you like more than others. So I leave it at that.
Thank you. I'm just kind of going back in the comments too, because I didn't want to miss anybody.
Sure.
Someone said, I wonder if there are ways to connect with shunned JWs sooner. Keywords that won't make them afraid. This is such a challenge. Maybe a suicide hotline? I wonder if they are keenly aware and trained, especially for religious cults. I think they're referencing the suicide hotlines. And that's a great bridge and link that we could reach out to, you know, especially with ICSA, or perhaps you've done that already in your own work, is reach out to those with suicide hotlines and educate about cultic groups and some of the challenges. What are your thoughts on that, Michael?
Okay, I haven't done anything specifically regarding suicide hotlines. I do. Yeah. I'm sure that you could, I don't know, I'm sure you could catch people there. Something about that feels kind of strange to me. I wouldn't, that would have to be not just ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I don't know their training, so it's hard for me to speak
I don't either.
To that. You know, as far as when you say catching shunned ex-JWs earlier, I don't know if you mean catching them before they leave, but there are there's so many outlets out there for ex-Jehovah's Witness activism. Everything from podcasts to YouTube, websites, blogs, forums, Facebook groups. Reddit has a huge ex-Jehovah's Witness group. There are a lot of people who are finding these things before they leave. And so in that way, we're catching them early. As far as getting them mental and emotional help, that's a whole, that requires people reaching out. That's a whole other ballgame. I believe that most of these groups are promoting professional mental health and trying to help people find that. So, yeah, I mean, I think the suicide hotline is pretty interesting, but it
Well,
also.
oh, go ahead. Well, I know on Reddit, isn't like under the JW community, don't they have like a suicide help? I'm
Yes,
trying.
I believe
Okay.
I believe they do.
Yeah.
I
I feel
mean,
like there's some sort of bridge going on with,
I've
you
had
know,
many, I've had multiple people reach out to me who were suicidal.
yeah,
So people are finding people out there who are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and expressing that, and then hopefully we are all recommending, that they talk to someone. So
right. Some other people, since we're, running out of time here, I just wanted to read some of these comments. Let's see. Are there any specific resources you recommend regarding dealing with the anger and rage issues that many ex-members of cult groups experience? It's a great question.
I do not have a particular resource, but my question to people typically with the anger and rage is, and you can talk about this with a professional of whatever sort you choose, but what is the underlying feeling? Anger and rage typically are covering up a feeling. For me, it was profound sadness. I walked around with a lot of rage, and it covered up profound sadness that I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to project. I didn't know how to look at. I didn't know how to deal with. And so, my question to people who are dealing with anger and rage is typically to think about what is that maybe covering up, because it seems to be more a symptom than the actual feeling for most people.
Right. Some other people commented, I joined ICSA not too long ago and already find it so helpful. Thank you, whoever wrote that. Someone else said, thanks for this from Australia. How cool you're tuning in from Australia. They said so helpful. We've also had some really like heartbreaking comments where, people have been saying, yeah, like this has been my experience. Someone else said, my family shunned me and it's been really hard. My father was a high priestess. I want friends and, my skills are poor. Someone else was saying, thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate what you were doing here. So no matter where you guys are at tonight, whether it may be in a place of heartbreak and you're just seeking connection, or perhaps you are more in the recovery process, I hope this has been helpful. Michael is always incredibly helpful and he's here. If any of you want to talk, ICSA is here, of course, if any of you ever want to message us. What I announced yesterday, I want to re-announce today, and just take a minute to do that, is that if you guys, during this really crazy time in the world, we want to offer a free scholarship for a web membership for ICSA. If you guys need access to resources, please email us as a reminder for me so I know who you are and I can make sure and get you guys that scholarship so that you can go in through the member portal and access all these resources. I just wanted to make that known. Someone else commented, it has been challenging to stop gaslighting myself in new relationships rather than perpetuating victim paradigm. Thank you so much for your work, Michael. Let's see. There's so many great interactions and questions. I feel like we could take all night, you guys. Um, this is a great question. Michael, do you train other cult specialty coaches?
Nope.
Have you been approached to inform therapists and maybe host your own training program for specialty coaches? I have a two-part question.
All right. I don't currently train other coaches, and I haven't been approached by anyone other than other people maybe wanting to coach, which I give advice on, but within the parameters of what I'm comfortable giving advice on as well. I do think that a program for therapists would be great, to be honest, and I'm sure it was quite naive. When I created my first podcast called This JW Life, I did that hoping that this JW Life and the way I told my story and the way I laid things out about Jehovah's Witnesses, I was hoping that it might lead to something, but where I could help train professionals, in helping Jehovah's Witnesses in particular, or some of the things that other groups, I'm sure, like, many people are resonating with this. I'm sure it would help with other groups as well. So
Sure.
I do think it's a great idea. It's just not something that I've been approached about personally. And I've been so busy podcasting, and I've set up some websites to help ex-witnesses, xjwhelp.com, and doing videos and things to try to help people that I haven't really had that opportunity.
I will say too, the interview that you guys just watched with Michael and I, it's on ICSA's YouTube channel. I promise it's not that choppy on our YouTube channel. I'm sorry, the Wi-Fi was giving us some issues. But feel free to share that with therapists. If you are a mental health professional, that's partly why I did that interview with Michael, was to provide knowledge to therapists as well as former members. So feel free to share that. Michael, could you share your email with everybody and your contact info? And I want to type it to everyone in this group here as well.
Sure. My coaching website is storyworkscoaching.com. So the word story, the word works, coaching.com. And my email address is storyworkscoaching@gmail.com.
Coaching@gmail.com.
And I actually started offering, in February, I started offering pay what you want coaching to help more people, because I know that a lot of the people that are leaving groups are struggling. There's, many of us who leave groups, we've been isolated. We haven't had certain employment opportunities. It can be very difficult to find. And to have expendable income for something like this. So I offer pay what you want coaching starting at $20 for a 50-minute session. And I have been able to help a lot more people by doing that. And that's what I love to do. So that's what I do.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you guys. The comments have been amazing. It's been hard to keep up, which is a great sign. For all the questions that went unanswered, when we end this session today, I'll get a copy of all the chat and the questions, and I will see if we can, help answer some of those. If I'll have access to everyone's email, and I'll see what I can do, and I can pull my resources together with Michael. So thank you guys so much. Michael, thank you so much keep doing it. I love the pay what you want for coaching. I think that's amazing. Someone made a comment, we need like a billionaire to offer more financial resources for former members, and it's true. So if anyone knows any of those connects, let us know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it would go such a long way. So thank you, everybody. Tomorrow's video will be featuring Steve Eichel and the history of ICSA. Steve Eichel is the current president of ICSA. And yeah, stay tuned. Keep your eye on the schedule for the series. I believe tomorrow, the recording of Rachel Bernstein, the very first video in this series, will be put on YouTube. So for those of you who missed it, we'll be able to watch. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Michael, so much. You have a great night.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the comments. I've seen them scrolling past down there, and I just can't reply as I do this. So.
It's okay. And I'll make sure and give you some of that info so you can see what people have been, that way you can read over what people were
Okay,
saying.
appreciate it. Yeah.
It's tough to keep up with everything.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Everyone stay safe and take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.